introduction to the skeletal system. So then, like any other system, you're going to have, cells, and you put together cells, you're going to get tissues, and when you put together tissues, you get organs, and when you put together organs, you're going to get systems, right? So in this case, we are talking about the skeletal system. So everything that we'll have to talk about is going to be bones, basically, right? So then, how are the bones organized? The bones are organized in this concentric structures right here, right there, that, and this, and this. This is going to be called the osteum. The osteum, as you can see right there. So the bones basically are going to be organized in osteons. Okay, in the middle of the osteum, you're going to see this little hole right there in the middle, which is going to be called the central canal. If we magnify that, that's what you're going to see right here. And in the central canal in there, you can see three colors. You got red, blue, and yellow. That's going to be the artery, the vein, and the nerve. And you need these three structures to give nutrients, for example, to the cells that are going to build these bones. What is the name of these cells that build the bones? It's going to be let me do it this way. That builds the bone is going to be the osteoblast. The cell that destroys the bone. We have cells that are going to destroy or remove bone. Those are going to be the osteoclast. And then we're going to have a cell that is going to maintain the bone. Maintain the bone. That's going to be the osteocyte. What am I putting this maintain next to the osteoblast? Because the osteoblast will turn into the osteocyte in order to maintain the bone. So then, to make a long story short, then how many cells we have in our bone? Then we're going to have the osteoblast, the osteoclast, we're going to have osteocytes. So then, how can we get different cells in our bones? Because in our bones, we're going to have a stem cell. Stem cells are the ones that are going to have in your bones that will allow you to have different types of bones, different types of cells in your bones. Okay, this stem cell, in a lot of books, you're going to find that these ones are considered osteogenic cells. Okay, so therefore, what cells do you find in your bone? You're going to find the osteogenic cell, which is a stem cell. You're going to have osteoblast, osteoclast, osteocytes. So we said that the osteoblast is going to build the bone. How the osteoblast builds the bone? Well, the osteoblast is going to build the bone in these concentric structures right here called the osteons. In the osteons, in the middle, you're going to have a hole in there, which is going to be called a central canal. And in there, you're going to have the artery, vein, and nerve that will provide nutrients to the cells that we mentioned before. Where are these cells? These cells are going to be located right there in these spaces right there. So then what you see in red right there is going to be the osteocyte. Now, the osteocyte is right there embedded in the bone. So in here, you're going to have a little hole right there, and that cell is going to be inside. So there's a little hole, and the cell is inside. There is a little hole, cell is inside. So the little hole right there in the bone is going to be called the lacunae. Okay, so that's what you have right there. Now, communication in between the different types of little holes right there, that's going to be the canaliculi, as you can see right here. Okay, and the bone itself is the one that you're going to find in between these spaces, and that's going to be the lamellae. Now, what type of bones can you have? As you can see right here, yes, you're going to organize this on concentric structures called osteons, but you're going to have two main types of bones. This one is going to be called compact bone. There's no spaces in there. And then you are going to have this other one right there. As you can see, there are spacings in there. That one is going to be called spongy bone. So I was saying that we have, what is the name of the cell that builds the bone? That's going to be the osteoblast. Now, how many types of bones or how many types of different bones can the osteoblast build? Well, it can build two. You're going to have compact bone and a spongy bone. That's a spongy, and this is compact. But the osteoblast can also build the bones based on the shape. You're going to have flat bones, irregular bones, short bones, and long bones. So then these bones that you see right here, so then the osteoblast builds the bones, but based on the structure, you're going to have compact and spongy. But based on the shape of the bones that are being built, this one is based on the shape, then you're going to have flat, irregular, short, or long. So then if we go over here, we can see right there in the text, right, that we have right here. the osteogenic cells, right? The osteogenic cells, remember I said those are going to be the stem cells, right? The ones that are going to give rise to the other of cells that we have. Now we can see a real picture of an osteon, right? This is a real picture using a microscope. You can clearly see here the osteon right there. This is just, obviously, this is just one. So if we scroll down right here, this is what I just mentioned, right? Central canal, I mentioned the lamellae, the lacunae, the perforating canals, right? The communications between the cells. That's what we have. And then we also mentioned that regardless of the osteons that you have in there, the bones, these osteons are going to form spongy bone, right, or compact bone, right? So then the compact bone is on the outside. And you can see right here, the osteon. Even in the spongy bone, you're going to have in there osteons. The reason why we have this structure right there with holes in it is because inside there, we're going to put the bone marrow will go right here in these spaces. Okay, so then, as I mentioned before, the outside, that's compact, right? But the inside, right, that's going to be the spongy bone. And why do we need these holes? Because inside there, inside these holes, what we're going to have is going to be the bone marrow. The bone marrow is very important because the bone marrow, for example, produces the red blood cells that we have in your body. So if you scroll down, so then in this case, students actually look, they get a slide, which is going to be a slide from a bone, and students need to make the drawing here. Usually the slide that they get in order to look at that using the microscope, and what they're going to see is actually this, right? That's what they're going to see, and they make the drawing over there. So then if we start here, now we go to the bone marking. The bones can be classified based on the structure, and we say based on the structure, they can be compact and spongy. But we said not only that, we can classify them, right, based on the shape. And we said based on the shape, the bones can be long, short, flat, and irregular, right? That's what I already mentioned. So then if we scroll down right here, we have right here the examples of these different bones, right? You can see right there. This is going to be a long bone, right? So maybe go like this. This is going to be a long bone. It's going to be a flat bone. This is going to be a short bone. And this one is irregular bone right there. So this is a classification of the bones based on the shape right there. Now, obviously, these different bones, you're going to find them in different areas of our body. Each bone has different parts, as you can see right here. For example, this is a long bone, right? But it has something round in here. This is an irregular bone, but it has this thing that is kind of like sticking out of the bone. So therefore, you can see bones have their own marks, their own characteristics, if we can put it like that. So then these different characteristics that the bones are going to have, they are called bone markings. So then, for example, if you can say that in this long bone, one bone marking that you're going to have is this round area that you have right there at the top. When you have something round like that, you're going to call that a head. So for example, this is going to be a head. So you look at this, that's going to be a head right there. Now, something that sticks out of a bone, like in this case, for example, in this bone, then that is going to be called a process. So we can say that this is a process right there. So bones are going to have different bone markings, but these bone markings are going to be not necessarily the same in all the bones. Some bones may have a head, as I show you right here. Some bones may have a process, as I show you right here, but they are not the same. Bone, but most of the bones in our body, they're going to have their own name. So for example, this bone right here is the humerus. This bone right here is the vertebrae. And this process right here is called the vertebral or spinous process because it's located in your vertebrae. And this is the head. We said this is the humerus. So therefore, this is going to be the head of the humerus. So what you need to learn in this class, right, for your test, for example, is going to be the different parts that you have in these bones. Right here, you can see more or less a table where you're going to give a description of more or less all the different markings that you can find in the bone. So for example, right here, I mentioned the head. Right here, you can see head. So it's a rounded end of a bone. And that's what I just showed you right here. Right, this is a round end of a bone right there. Right, so therefore, that's a head. I also mentioned that you have a spine. This one right here is going to be called the spinous process. We can actually go over here and see, we find the spine or process, right here, process. Look, if you look over here, is any bony projection right there. Yeah, any bonding projection. As you can see here, if we scroll down right here, we can see that this is a projection, right, coming out of the bone. So you have in there a process. Okay, so then every bone is going to have its own name, but in addition to that, each bone is going to have different parts, different markings. Therefore, you need to know the markings that you're going to have in these bones. So we scroll down right here. We're going to talk about, for example, we're going to look first at one type of bone that we have, which is going to be the long bone. Right? As you can see, this is a very long bone like this. We said the outside of the bone is compact, the inside, right, there is spongy. You can actually see it here, right? Compact outside, spongy on the inside. Only with long bones, you're going to have these parts right here. The top part right here, all this is going to be called an epiphysis. And all this is also going to be called epiphysis. But this one is going to be called proximal epiphysis because that's going to be closer to your body compared to this one, which is going to be considered distal epiphysis. In the middle, you're going to have the diaphysis. So these names apply only to long bones, where you're going to have epiphysis at the top, epiphysis at the bottom. The epiphysis at the top is proximal, at the bottom is going to be distal. In the middle, you're going to have the diaphysis. So what is this part right here? This is going to be the diaphysis of this long bone. Now, our bones are going to grow, right? So when we are younger, right, we were not as tall as we are now, but little by little, we start growing and growing and growing. The reason why we grow is because in our bones, we are going to have cartilage, especially at the top right here and at the bottom right here. Eventually, this cartilage that we have in there is going to be covered with calcium. So you know, our bones are made of calcium. So first, our bones are going to be like this. Look. Our bones are going to have calcium in here, calcium in here. So as we start growing and growing, the calcium is going to be deposited in here like this and like this. Eventually, they're going to be able to cover the cartilage that I put right there in yellow. So then eventually, they're going to get in contact with that, and they're going to cover this part. And when we cover the cartilage that was there in yellow, that's when we stop growing. So then this calcium that you see right there in blue eventually covers the golden, and we're going to stop growing. That happens more or less when we turn, I don't know, maybe it's like 16 or 17 years old, right? When we don't grow anymore. That is because all these areas were covered already with cartilage, therefore we are not going to grow anymore. If you think about it, there's going to be a moment in time in which the calcium in the bones are going to reach the area where the cartilage is. Right? Basically, there's going to be the transition between what the blue is and what the golden is. This area of transition between the blue and the golden is what they're trying to show you right here. Okay, so then they are trying to show you right here, this one, this part right, actually let me use the color right here. Okay, so then this is gonna be the blue, obviously, but it's upside down in this case. So right there, and this part right here is the golden, right there. So that this golden, again, it's just upside down. It's the same thing right there. That's that. Okay, and this is the blue. As you can see, there's an area of transition between what is cartilage, which is this, and what is the actual bone, which is this part right here. And these areas of transition, that's what's going to be called the zones right here. So you see here, zone of ossification, because in this part is becoming more bone and bone and bone. As I was telling you, eventually all this bone will gonna go over here and will gonna cover the entire thing. But there's going to be, obviously, when we are young, there's going to be this area of transition between what is bone and what is cartilage. Right here, you're going to see zone of proliferation, for example, because in here, this is still growing. Therefore, we are going to continue growing until it gets to a moment in time in which these are going to be filled completely with calcium, and they're going to cover all these areas with calcium as well. And that's it. That's the last time in which we are going to grow. And then more or less this happens when we turn 16, 17, obviously. Okay, and that's what you have right there.